just a real brief context to this podcast. This is the beta, the first episode of the verbal process. This podcast is to be a conversation, a very much what the title calls it to be, a verbal process, a conversation between two college students. It is the brainchild of us two guys who had just been meeting up for weeks and having these conversations. And as we were processing, we felt that there was just a good fruit that was coming from it, as revelation was being brought and things were being, understood better and on a deeper level. And we thought, let's throw a microphone in the mix and see what comes out from it. So this is, again, for the second time, it's the beta. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's opinions and biblical truth in the mix. But that's the goal, is that all this be based on what it is to process through life, process through being a disciple of Christ, keeping everything on the basis of biblical truth. And it's just two guys throwing out their thoughts and their heart and verbally processing. It's as simple as that. So hopefully you can enjoy this hour and a half. It's uncut, and hopefully in the future we can put some visual to it, so there's more of a reference. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can kind of follow along with your eyes as well, not just listening, because we go on some random tangents talking about music and movies and whatnot. But overall, the overarching theme of this podcast is going to be processing through life as a disciple of Christ and allowing the Lord to bring revelation through the verbal process. So hopefully for those that tune into this, you're able to kind of engage in this conversation to the best of your ability, even with its kind of sporadic kind of line of thought, I guess, and glean whatever the Lord might have you glean from it, because we have nothing special to offer, to bring no wisdom or knowledge. It's just us talking. So I hope you can enjoy, stick with it, scroll through maybe some of the music or movie stuff if it's not too intriguing, and hopefully as we are faithful to push content out, we can better suit it for the listener and the viewer to make it more enjoyable and a bit easier to stick with, not so awkward or just difficult to listen to, because this is the first time I've done anything like this. So this is the beta, the verbal process. Hopefully you enjoy. Prayerfully, may the Lord speak to your heart, and until next time. When giving the most amount of dialogue and input, just
no, bro, you're chilling. But honestly, I appreciate those moments, because for me that's a moment to think, to reflect, to be and honestly, if I watch the way that I respond to specific things, listening sometimes physically feels like it drains me. And that's a good thing, because there's the sense of I'm called to, and I actually desire to care about what the individual's saying, not just merely thinking of, oh, here's a response or anything like that. And just like James says, being slow to speak, quick to listen, that has to be second nature. And in accordance with the Spirit, that is the nature of it. It's just I can think of so many times probably, that we come to the Lord and we're just oh yeah, and I was thinking about this and this, and just, or even just trying to sit there and be quiet per se. I'm not advocating meditation or everything is just still. But But that conglomeration of stress and all that stuff, that over time, if you just sit and contemplate upon who He is, things get put in their position.
Yeah, and I think
it's just befuddled.
And I think it is on. It can be prayer, but it can also meditative prayer, as in sitting and contemplating on Him. But it can also be meditating on Scripture, and it's as you read the Word, everything that's going on in your mind or in your heart, He puts it into place based on the Word.
Bro, pro.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not something that you really. It's not something that I still don't realize it. I'm still struggling to like understand that. Oh yeah, if I come to Scripture each and every day, everything that I would wake up with as an anxiety, as a fear, as a grievance or a frustration will be put in its proper place. And yet I don't do it. It's not beyond me, but it's really frustrating to think that that God has given us the key. He's given us all things pertaining to life and godliness, and yet we still choose to stray from the path. And that's something that he's been, I mean, going back to our conversation earlier today in the car, it's like, you know, he's been breaking my legs and been throwing me over his shoulder, and I'm learning to love the process of having my legs broken, but I am prayerfully hoping that I'm growing in maturity to where I no longer am going to be that little ewe, that little lamb that keeps straying from the flock, and that he, as the good shepherd, has to keep coming back and breaking my legs. And he's like, okay, like I'm hoping that I'm going to say, okay, whoa, let me be aware of my situation. And instead of, you know, being forcibly humbled and having to be taught, rather allowing myself to be moved into a teachable posture and staying close, staying near to him. And especially over the last couple of years since being here and since just coming to my faith and really like following him, it's been an ebb and a flow. And I think I get frustrated because I get tired of the process. There's moments where I enjoy the process, and it can be very easy to lose hope if we don't see that there's improvement.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in my relationship, where it's like, we've been here before, but it's like, okay, what's been the distance in time though? Has there been improvement? What is the current heart posture this time? Has there been improvement? And it's the same thing. And so, like, I'll be honest, like the process is exhausting and I hate it. But I think we just have to realize that that's just a part of life, and it's something that we're always going to have to deal with because we're freaking humans and we're going to be on that roller coaster. So yeah, that's something he's been taking me through lately, is like, I felt like over the last couple of weeks, he really broke my legs, and revealing to me that through time with him in the Scriptures and sticking close to him that way, I don't have to be constantly broken, but I can rather just stay near to my good shepherd. I know his voice. I can stay near, you know? So.
Yeah, and that's the legitimacy of your sonship.
Yeah, bro, we know his voice. Why do we keep straying? We know his voice, you know? And yeah, you're right. And that was one thing I was really encouraged by. And it wasn't even, I mean, yeah, it was from Scripture. Because I was reading, it was like Emma sent me Psalm like 41 through 43. And in one of those Psalms talking about knowing his voice. And it was through that Scripture, but then through the small, still voice of the Lord, where he was just like, dude, you know my voice, like, but knowing my voice isn't enough. You can hear me, but if you don't obey me, like, you're still going to get hurt. You're still going to stray. You know, it doesn't do you any good to know my voice and to walk away from it.
Yeah, and it's quite amazing the fact that, like, our sonship isn't nullified by our unfaithfulness. You know what I mean? Like, we have this spirit is the spirit of adoption.
Yeah.
Which is contingent upon, like, any father or mother could bring their child in kicking and screaming, and that doesn't advocate a hatred. That doesn't advocate like in a sense, it's like, is it against the will and people getting into that whole thing? But it's like, because of love, I'm bringing you to that refuge, which is where you know that you need to be, but you're not appropriately doing as such. And that's just it. It's not that, like, Christ no longer has his flock, and a lot of people, I think, tend to think in evangelicalism especially that, like, he leaves the 99. It isn't talking about the world. It's talking about his sheep. Like, in the midst of his sheep, already identified as his flock, he's still willing, in his description of his love, obviously he doesn't leave or forsake those sheep, but he's willing to go as if you were the whoever the individual is that's straying away, as the focal point of pursuit. because he's not gonna lose any that have been given into his hand.
Yeah, and this is a total tangent that we don't necessarily need to go off on, but it's just funny how we tend to try to humanize God.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. And I'm not like taking a shot at like what you just said, but just simply like thinking about different worship songs that we say and sing and listen to, and it's like like he goes after the one, but he's actually going after the whole, because we can all feel like that song is speaking to us so individually, and yet it's speaking to every freaking person, because
no, exactly. And that's what I say about Genesis 3, where he's talking to Eve, and yes, he's talking to wives, like your desire will be for your husband. But if you read the nature of that contention point, I feel like, though it doesn't directly say, and I don't want to like eisegete, the passage, put my input in it, but like characteristically, I see in principle, that's the church. Our like desire is for our husband's position.
Yeah.
Is to be set in like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's just it. He is the groom. He is Lord.
Yeah.
And we just submit to him.
Yeah.
And we're gonna, the flesh is gonna fight against that. And
that's what's interesting about the church being referenced as the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like, if without that image of us being a body, then there's never really a clear picture of us needing to be congruent and like working with one another. And
straight up, there's not a more perfect like illustration.
And that's like kind of what we were talking about the other day in John with Moses in the burning bush, and talking about how hard it would be for somebody to make up the thousands upon thousands of strings that coincide and cross-reference within scriptures, where it's just like, I'm sorry, but there's no author in the history of mankind that could have done that with that
which would be considered foolish. You see what I'm saying? Like the paradox. And what I mean by that is like, also in the midst of those strings is God using Rahab the harlot, God using what wouldn't have been considered women to be the first ones to see him out of the tomb and testify. Like, completely, going against the wisdom of the world synonymously.
Yeah. I love it. It's beautiful. Yeah. Dude, I've honestly, like, I know it's been a busy couple of weeks and everything, but, like, this has been one of the most consistent parts of my semester, I think, is us just, I don't know when we started doing it,
dude,
but it's been one of the most consistent parts of my semester to just get to come and, spend time just talking and chatting with you and like externally processing my thoughts. And I've just loved it, because I feel as though the Lord has been doing a big like pruning work within our conversations for me, and it's just I don't even know how to phrase it. It just the joy and just like the sheer just like growth that I can feel when we get to do this is just awesome. And I'm just so thankful for you, and thankful that we've gotten to have these times, and I'm glad that we got back to it, because it's been like at least 3 weeks. It's been at least 3 weeks since we've gotten to do this. So
that's like dang, because we always do it on like Wednesdays and stuff too. And it makes sense just with like finals and stuff, but still I've missed it as well. Like I keep thinking of like, when are we gonna do this, when are we gonna chat it up, when are I see you and I can ask you still like how you're doing and stuff, but there's a difference, like there's a setup part, like
we really get to dive in to like what's going on, and we get to really just process things together differently when we sit down.
Straight up. Dude, I was like, we were talking about Mind's Eye earlier, and literally I was like going back to Wolf Mother. They have a song called Mind's Eye. I was like, podcast introduction. I was like, bro, what if we like did that though? What if that was like the first title? Because we were talking about like the location of the mind and stuff like that, and now we're talking about the application of basically what Francis Chan says in his marriage book, staring at God and everything falls into place, like mind's eye or something like that, because that's also that's associated with like Illuminati and stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's even like what Joe Rogan has on his for his emblem is like it's him with like this, and then he has like an eye,
psychedelic.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, dude, I'm definitely not like there's nothing concrete until
for sure
we've actually like done it. So, but yeah, like let's keep brainstorming on that, and I feel like there's something more kind of, I want to say like minimalistic kind of sounding that we can probably find that would just be more appealing to both the eye when you read it and both to the mouth when you speak it, you know what I mean?
The eye, huh? Appealing to the...
But...
This is such like a...
Oh my gosh.
This would be sick. Ooh.
So it's
take me back.
So melodramatic. It's like, oh my god.
This is that end scene of the movie where they just like
literally somebody's just died.
Yeah,
and
like,
just
like
it's that foreground shot of the hero that's passed. And everybody else moving on in the background.
And that car just like there's the panning out.
Break.
That's funny. That's a sick song.
No, that reminds me of you never saw Logan, but Johnny Cash.
I've seen the climax of the climactic part where he basically dies.
Yeah.
And he's like,
spoiler.
He's like, don't let them.
Dude, actually, I remember now. I did like that movie. I remember bawling, actually watching that movie, because he fathers this girl who's a mutant, and they just build this relationship, and he's like all hardened because he's been living for such a long time, and you just see him like get soft throughout the movie. Like it's like a tough father-daughter relationship at first, and then you see his heart just get so softened that at the end he's willing to sacrifice himself. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's just like, don't be who they made you or something like that, or don't become what they made you or whatever he says. And actually, Maxwell had a that's one of I think his favorite films, because he takes that and he like talks about, he has like a short article that he talks about like being like, I guess he doesn't use this word, but like assimilated with evangelicalism, like specifically in seminary and stuff like that. There's a lot of, he testifies in his lecture at Wheaton about some stuff that happened to him, like some power plays and stuff that happened to him while he was in seminary, and so it was pretty crazy. But it also made me think of him again, because he has another article where he specifically talks about, because we're talking about like the mind's eye and the location of the conscious and stuff. He talks about somebody plausible that it's sin that begins in the imagination. Sin, like sin, it wasn't merely Eve, though the fruition of it, not a pun, but the fruition was partaking of the fruit. It was through the imagination, that the temptation was cultivated and
of course, it didn't just
it wasn't even just like, I mean, it was the pull of the desires, but it wasn't the pull of the flesh yet, because
it doesn't just happen. Somebody doesn't become a rapist overnight.
No,
that's not how that works.
A little over time.
Yeah. It's a slow fade, like that. What is it, like that Casting Crown songs or whatever?
Yeah, I was like the dragon.
The dragon, yeah. But I mean, that's the reality. Is, a pastor doesn't wake up one day, or a priest doesn't wake up one day and just say like, yeah, I'm gonna start sleeping with 17-year-old girls. It's like, no, it's starting with the eye, which is what we see in Genesis. It's the lust of the eyes, which turns into the lust of the flesh, which then the pride of life. Isn't that how it goes? And then you commit it over time. It's like, first I'm just checking out girls, and then checking out girls is enough, so I start watching porn. Then that's not enough, so I start, making myself feel some type of way through that outlet, and then that's not enough, so it's never just overnight. And that's the thing, is when people, like, I remember I had a conversation with my room earlier this semester, and I was like, the reason why I'm so serious about admitting faults and killing sin, mortifying sin at its earliest stages, even though it might be embarrassing to talk about something that you struggle with or something that you're bearing, if you decide not to, the consequences are far greater than just that little bit of embarrassment or a little bit of pain that maybe you feel in that moment. It's scary. And I told him, I was like, I will not allow myself to walk down the road of becoming a monster, because that is the only option. That is the only, like, there can be reconciliation along the road if somebody is, feels like they're so far gone, and they're so far gone into, pornography, or struggling with masturbation, or, checking out other people, or even struggling with, like, homosexuality, like, whatever it is. You're never too far gone, but I think there does come a certain point within the reprobate heart where it's like, you're not going to choose to go back.
Yeah, well, and that's the nature of, and I think that's what we need to understand too. Like, that's the unregenerate state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing within us at this point that would say, I choose God. Like, I choose, and through any form of recognition of, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so far off, it's only because there's been a revelation of who God is in comparison to who we're not. Like, we're blind to the reality of who we are until God protrudes forth and reveals that we, that's where our sight, per se, comes from, is that moment of God revealing himself.
Yeah. Dude, that's what I did. That's what I did the John paper over, is the blind man. I think it's John chapter 9. The blind man. And it's like, even at the end, and actually bleeds into chapter 10, even at the end, the blind man gets healed, and there at the end, the Pharisees are still blind. The Pharisees remained blind, and the whole point of that miracle of the blind man from birth being healed wasn't simply, and this is what I was talking about in my paper, is like, it's not simply the fact that he gets physically healed. That's great, and God does care about, providing for our physical needs, and providing for us while we're here on earth, but Jesus cares way more above and beyond about our spiritual state, and being and having our hearts be opened, having our spiritual eyes being open to the reality of the truth of him being the Messiah, and us being sinners, and our need for him. And here at the end of chapter 9,
which verses
35 to the end, it says, Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of God? So he's already healed the blind guy. Okay. And he answered and said, who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you. Then he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. And Jesus said, for judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who may see be made blind. Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, are we blind also? And Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains. And then he goes on in chapter 10 to talk about the good shepherd, and how he, or actually the doorkeeper, and how he is the door, and how there's only one way to come to the doorkeeper. And then at the end of that first section in chapter 10 verse 6, it says, Jesus used this illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke to them. Yeah. So even after he talks about being blind, they still, whoever's there still does not understand, and I don't know if that's because they weren't asking or what that meant, but yeah. It's just, it's that importance of us being made spiritually, I don't know, it's not necessarily the opposite of blind. I mean, I don't want to say awake, but just having our spiritual eyes being opened to the reality of him. And I was reading a commentary, I don't know if it was David Guzik or Spurgeon, but he was just saying, like, it is Jesus that pursues us. We're blind from birth, and it takes Jesus initiating that healing process for our spiritual eyes to be opened. The blind man couldn't seek out Jesus. He couldn't even see Jesus, right, let alone seek him out. And so it takes Jesus, it takes God seeking us out in order that we might have our spiritual eyes, the eyes of our heart, being open to him as the Messiah, having our spiritual eyes being open. This blind man knew. This blind man knew after his physical eyes were opened, he was able to see that Jesus was more than just a magician or a physician or a doctor, but that he was the God-man, that he was the Messiah, and therefore he's willing to admit his own personal state, that he was in need,
right?
You know, and it's sad that I think so many of, I just go on to think about the Pharisees and just like, oh.
No, honestly, I mean, like, we love him because he first loved us.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we weren't capacitated, again, in our nature. The choices, choice comes to the actions that are made come from the nature which is within the individual. Now, granted, the Christian shows with the contention of Romans 7. There's things that I know that I still do, and I don't want to do them now.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, because that's where the sight is versus that, well, I'm okay, like, I'm fine, and being completely oblivious. There's just that veil. That's how Israel's described too.
Yeah.
Until the Lord reveals himself to them specifically.
Yeah.
In Romans 11. And so that's crazy. Just because it's why if you read Matthew 13, it's like after the parable of the soils, when they come to him, and after he had taught, they were like, they're like, what do these things mean? They're inquiring, they're asking, and he's like, it's been given to you to understand these things, but to them I speak in parables, that seeing, they may not see, hearing, they may not hear, like, they're not going to be able to understand, because I have an intention to reveal it to them. Like, there's a sense of specificity with those who, as a result of what he's saying, are inquiring further. Now, what are you saying?
Right.
And
that's them admitting to their blindness. Yeah.
That's them understanding. I actually don't understand what this means, and so through that cultivated, like, humility by the work of what Christ did first, it's like it takes us admitting that we're blind, and maybe not necessarily knowing that or recognizing it, but basically the gist of it is, I don't know, therefore I am blind. Please help me to understand, make my eyes open to this truth. Wow. Yeah. Here's the song from the Logan movie where he dies.
Yeah, they played I think they played a couple times throughout the film, but at the very end.
I heard myself today.
Dude, the trailer for this film is so intense too.
Yeah, this is his top song on Spotify.
Probably because of the movie, honestly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a good song, but
Johnny Cash.
Yeah. It's also like his last album too.
Yeah.
Before he died. Yeah, it's like that song fits so perfectly within Logan.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely like sent chills down the spine.
Wow, 1958.
Oh, dude, Emma's at the Bible and Human Sexuality conference right now with
over in
Kayla.
over
Compass.
in,
Compass Bible Church.
yeah, over in Mission Viejo.
Mm-hmm.
Because Alicia was talking about going to that.
Dude, it looks pretty good.
That's sick.
We got to listen to that. We should listen to that Vodi Bakum sermon at some time.
Dude, I haven't heard. Is that the one you were talking about with Navon?
Yeah, I think I thought I sent it to you after I No, never mind. Take that back. I sent it to Navon.
Okay.
Because I drove him and the gang to the airport when they flew out to Washington, and I was listening to it on the way back, and then I sent it to him, and my goodness, man, like, so good.
Dude, now I want a Johnny Cash one.
No, you got me. So it's funny. I didn't grow up listening to like 80s and 90s and 70s like rock.
Oh yeah.
And when you played Wolf Mother, I was like, dang. Like now that I'm a little bit older,
Killing in the name of
I want to go back in time and start listening to like AC/DC and like
Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, bro. And
you do what they told ya.
How you do what they told ya? Oh my gosh.
Dude.
Not Motley Crue, but some of those bands.
Queen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Just like Mary Antoinette. Yeah, I just have like I've gone across every genre. Not like all the songs in the world obviously, but like I've just gone at least through every like major genre.
I haven't.
At some point, like I've had a short season. Like I'm just listening like
I've hit a lot, but not country.
Country, I had a short like George Strait. I don't know if I consider Johnny Cash country, more like Western.
Yeah, he's kind of like Western blues, and like
Yeah.
I can do that. Like, I think I've hit every genre in terms of I've hit at least the subgenres, because there's like the main.
Yeah,
there's like those main core
jazz.
genres.
Yeah.
It's like jazz, country, hip hop, rock. I feel like classical.
Yeah.
That's probably it. And then within
kinda
each of those, you have subgenres, then you have like extreme, like
alternative.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And it's like where you go from like rock, where you have like AC/DC, to like Vampire Weekend, which is like alternative, like pop rock. Like, so it's like in that sense, I've hit every genre.
Yeah.
Where like I love Mumford and Sons and like that type of stuff, which is kind of a subgenre of country, but I've never listened to country itself.
It's like it's so interesting because like you have things like have you ever heard of Gustav Holst?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so you have stuff like
Who is he? What genre is he?
classic.
Oh, okay. I love like movie soundtracks and stuff though. Like I listen to like Hans Zimmer,
Dude,
John Williams.
I love John Williams.
Yeah, bro.
Classic.
Dude, my buddy back home, Joel, is like he's a composer.
Really?
He just, I don't think he graduated, but he submitted a post-grad application for like San Diego or San Francisco out here to go. And he's so obsessed with John Williams.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's like that, and then there's like jazz.
Come on.
I love jazz.
That's not Coltrane.
Oh yeah.
It is?
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Dude.
gosh.
Come on, dude.
Dude, that's what my dad grew up giving to us right there was John Coltrane. I think I told you this before. John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Ahmad Jamal, and then on the other end of the spectrum was like freaking Kill Switch Engage. And like As They Lay Dying, Oh Sleeper. My first concert was Oh Sleeper, but yet like on the way home from the Oh Sleeper concert we listened to like John Coltrane and Miles Davis. And then you have like 90s hip hop, boom bap, like Gangstar and like A Tribe Called Quest, and then obviously like the cross movement, like the Christian hip hop.
That's just it. Like Rage Against the Machine.
I only know that one song because I always see the live performance that they did. That's so popular.
Which one?
It's with that song "Killing in the Name of," and there's like one live performance that is always on like Facebook or YouTube for some reason.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what the heck?
Killing in the name of. Yeah, because then you went from like that, and then you have like freaking Michael Jackson. Yeah. At my wedding though.
Yeah, bro, we're about to get down.
Oh, you know it too, dude.
No, it's funny though because with my lack of growing up listening to rock, where I had the extremes, I feel like I fell in the middle of the musical genres with alternative like pop music, where I was listening to like Passion Pit, Vampire Weekend, Postal Service, Matt and Kim, like all that stuff. And it's like, so where I was lacking in the genre of rock, I went straight for the alternative.
Ha! Dude, that's how King's Kaleidoscope, so they wanted to be like genre like identified was alternative. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to categorize you in.
Yeah, literally just
you're
gospel
literally
preaching.
Gospel, like 90s hip hop mixed with instrumental. And then you have people like you have that young Thrift Works, which is like Glitch.
I've never heard these guys.
Oh really? Yeah. They have like cussing and some stuff, so I won't listen to like their lyrical stuff. But I used to dance with these guys and stuff all the time.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like
Dubstep.
with the lack of rock, going to that alternative pop, I also went to like, this reminds me of like early Flume. Did you ever listen to Flume before he got big? Oh my gosh. Yeah, early Flume is very glitchy.
Yeah, that's what this is. This is glitch hop.
And oh, dude,
Who's that?
just like Flume.
This is that. Yeah, shit, bro. I'm down.
But no, I went to, like, I didn't really enjoy like heavy metal when I was younger, and so in turn I think I went to dubstep instead. And Skrillex was like, I was big into Skrillex when he was first out, and my first electronic concert was a Skrillex show in Council Bluffs.
Dang.
And then I've always been heavy into like the electronic music scene ever since then.
Wait, what's that? What was that one like huge, like very popular like dubstep song where it's like it had that whole build where it's like fire.
Oh, I think I recognize.
Because it's super like heavy.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember what like the chorus or the drop was?
No, well that's what it was. Because it was like.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I think I know. Dude, that's the thing though, is it could be countless. You know, we just literally just gave every dubstep meme right there in in the history of the internet. Dude, what's that one dubstep song? Oh yeah, the one that goes. Wait, yeah. So do you know which one that is? Oh yeah, that's like.
That's Flux Pavilion.
Oh my gosh.
Flux Pavilion, dude. I can't stop. Dude. Classic.
No, I think I might know the song that you're talking about. Oh my. Let's see if I can find it. Was this it?
No.
This wasn't it?
It was more of. No.
Okay.
It was more of like this like deep alien, and it had like the like it was like almost like Transformers sounding. I just can't remember.
It's probably an earlier Excision song then, cause like.
Oh yeah, Excision. That's
okay.
That's who it's by.
Okay, yeah, cause Excision is like known for his very like sci-fi, deep kind of bass. I went and saw him in Kansas City.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
It's not Throwing Elbows, is it? Cause Throwing Elbows has like a guitar riff in it.
No, I think it's from. Yeah, X-rated.
It's X-rated?
I think so.
Yeah.
Fire. Because yeah, him and Downlink And Datsik.
Yep, Datsik. That was the song I was just playing, was by Datsik.
Maybe it was Datsik. I don't remember. Dude, because I used to listen to all these guys. Maybe it,
It's like Alien versus Predator, bro. Good grief. This genre of electronic is like the heavy metal of.
yeah, it really is. It's something else, dude. King Kong. Oh my god. King Kong. Dude.
Navon's not gonna come by for coffee.
What?
Yeah.
Early life.
Oh my gosh. It's like dubstep and skateboarding. People hated on in the early 2000s, and then it like caught fire. Now everybody's all about it. It's what's in these days.
Can't believe I used to listen to that stuff.
Burning up. Are you looking pretty like caught up on like finals, like papers and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, the biggest thing is biblical counseling. I just need to write that guy
Oh yeah.
for Tuesday, because it's due, the book review. And then I need to, I need to finish the two youth ministry assignments,
Oh yeah.
which are due Monday, but then Monday, Wednesday, Thursday are my heavy homework days. Tuesday is kind of like I have to wake up at 5:30 if I want to do homework, because I have youth all day. I literally leave campus at, whenever I say goodbye in John, and then come back at like 5.
Dude, I miss waking up early.
Do it.
I don't anymore because my
Only 'cause
sleep
being-
schedule's so
yeah.
jacked up.
Security.
That was when like the beginning of the semester when I was getting to wake up like 5:30 every morning and spend time in the Word and just be disciplined in that way was, I mean, awesome. And like the Lord's definitely still been working even without it, but
Yeah.
it's been a lot harder without. And I just love having that discipline and that regiment now. Like, it would not have been me a couple of years ago, but I've fallen in love with the familiarity of that type of a regiment where it's like, yeah, I know that every day I'm gonna like surrender myself to the Lord for like at least an hour.
Yeah.
Before I start my day. And it's such a good time too, because being on this campus, like, you won't find a spare moment as soon as people are awake. Like there's not you don't get a breath without saying hi to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's not a bad thing, but that's something that I wish I would have been more aware of in my first 2 semesters, because I was so caught up in the social aspect of being here that I can honestly say, like, I kind of wasted. I mean, and nothing's wasted with the Lord, right? But it just feels like I, misstewarded my time, like where I could have had so much more time spent just growing in the Word and the knowledge of Him, and also just growing in relationship and closeness with Him. But I was too busy wanting to be at the next event or be with the next people hanging out, and
yeah. And that's why I brought the point out, Galatians 1:10 on Friday in dorm theory class. I was like, no matter how people respond, obviously we're to be at peace with all men as much as depends on us, Romans 12:18. But there's also the sense of obedience solely to the will of the Father. And that was even Christ saying to the disciples, hey, we're going to leave here even though there's a potential ministry opportunity, because for this reason I've come.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's how it has to be. I can't, be confined even to Taylor. Now granted, there's a difference there too, because things are heading towards
Yeah,
specific.
there's a different level of intentionality.
But at the same time too, it's like you can't negate what I'm called to.
Well, and we wonder why things here look so not like maybe people want them to in terms of a church body. It's because everybody's walking around seeking out satisfaction in having their value be found in other people.
Mm-hmm.
So they're running around from group to group, from person to person, always looking to be satisfied, but never actually seeking the Lord, or really seeking to be exhorted to say like, hey, like maybe we should go spend some time. Maybe you should go spend some time with the Lord. That's what I'm gonna go do. But rather, it's like, oh yeah, like you go do that. Now that you're gone, I'm gonna go find the next person to hang out with. And it's this painful cycle of building up an emotional experience with a group of people just to be let down, and then seeking out the next one. And it's tiring. And that's why I think a lot of people come here for a semester and then they leave, because they get burned out. They're not here for the right reason. And it's not that, even if they came with the wrong reason, if they were to just slow down and allow themselves to be captivated by the Lord, they would find so much joy. They'd find so much just satisfaction. I mean, they would find their purpose. They would find who they are. But yeah,
no, I completely agree.
And I'm still struggling with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm graduating. Oh my goodness, it's and all the things that I've been invited to be involved in. Nevertheless, like, I have to have those times where it's like, I'm just gonna bow out real quick, and I never want anybody to think per se in my people pleasing, like, oh, I'm avoiding you on purpose.
Yeah.
There's specific temptations sometimes where it's like, I feel like I'm just too tired to interact or even like legitimately care with what you're going through.
Of course.
But there's also the reality of like, hey, nobody or anything can stand in the way of what I need to do right now in this moment.
Yeah.
Staying faithful to what God's called me to do.
Yeah.
And so, as far as sociality goes, like, I'll invite you to come with me. Like, let's, you can come see what's up.
Yeah.
But I can't compromise right now, or negate the discipline that I have to instill in myself.
Yeah.
Lest I be, disqualified.
Yeah. And imagine if everybody was walking in that way. I think that the Holy Spirit would allow there to be more opportunities for us to actually be spending time together. Honestly,
Yeah.
like there would be this one accord where it's like, oh, you're going to go, just like say, for example, you're going to go run errands. I actually have errands that I need to run as well. Mm-hmm. Rather than, oh, you're going to go run errands. There's like some things that I probably should do, but I really want to just hang out with people right now. So, but the fact that you're not going to hang out with me or come hang out with us, you're kind of being a jerk right now. Yeah. There's this lack of understanding of just like you're saying, intentionality, where it's like, oh, you have stuff you got to take care of. I actually have stuff I need to take care of too. Why don't I come do that with you? Mm-hmm. But rather it's like, oh, you have stuff you got to take care of. I'm sure, neglecting and like basically being in a state of denial to the things that they have to take care of, and just running off to be distracted with other people or situations. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah. No, and then though we would never say it this way, the temptation, if we're that individual in that moment, is a pride issue of like, what, I'm not important enough for you to like, invest and take time, and it can feel that way because a lot of people are, recently have been vying for my attention. I don't know, it's just because the end of the semester, or they're just like wanting to hang out, and I do want to hang out, but like, being real, I can only connect with James, Peter, and John.
Yeah.
And even the 12.
Yeah.
But I can only go in depth with, so many people, even if I desired to go in with the 70.
Yeah.
I can know the 70, and then I can
you be acquainted with the 70. Yeah.
But I can't, and that's just that Christ wasn't bound by men in that way. Now, granted, in binding himself to the will of the Father, he sought exactly what he told Abram from the beginning.
Yeah.
And setting things in redemptive motion. He's like, I'm going to bless you and I'll make you inheritance and you shall be a blessing.
Yeah.
So through the blessing of God unto Abram, cultivated this identity that he was to be a blessing. So wherever he went, there was cause for flourishment. There was cause for the furtherance of continuing.
Yeah.
And the process. And that's what I went through last night with Genesis 12 with the youth. And it was just crazy because it's like you look at it and at the base of it, even if you look at all the heritage in like chapters 9 through 11 of all the things that happened, the biggest event is the Tower of Babel, and those are all the descendants of Noah. And so it's just crazy to think leading up to Abram, there's not this like, there wasn't this like traditional established people following and chasing after God or knowledge of Yahweh except by oral tradition and family line at that point. Because it doesn't say like Abram was practicing Judaism or he was practicing these things.
Right.
One, because it hasn't been instituted, but two, it just says now God came and spoke to Abram.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy part is like up to this point all there has been is rebellion and like Noah's obedience.
Yeah.
And so it had nothing to do with Abram individually other than God's specific purposes.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with his circumstances or anything of himself.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy. I was like, wow, like, you know what I mean? Like, but he continued, as it says, like, because we went through verses 1 through 9, and at the end it says, and, because he came to Canaan, and the Lord was like, I'm going to give this to you and your descendants. And then in verse 9 it says, and so he continued walking, like, southward.
Yeah.
Like, he continued on to what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think that, I was just thinking, I was just processing this, but do you think that because we only have word written of God speaking to Abram, that means that therefore God only during that time literally only spoke to Abram? Do you think that he spoke to anybody else? Because if he would have, those would be the words of God. And then it's like, why do we not
have an
account or even like, are there any records of ancient texts where it's like, oh, God actually did speak to other people during that time period aside from Abraham? They're just not considered a part of the canon. And then why are they not, if that's the case, and
that's an interesting like little trail to go down, because if you read it too, it doesn't even tell you how God approached Abram in that moment. It just says, now God had spoken to Abram.
Yeah.
Get out of your country, leave your father's house,
yeah.
Go to the land that I will show you. And so, as far as answering those specific questions, I think you could, all of you, for the remainder of the next 20 years, research all of that out. And I think the point is, what was brought out to me in the text is just that the divine drew near to the pagan individual. And it was just like, it's because it says now, and it's like, well, what point in time was that? Why that point in time? And it's just like, if nothing else, God's specific purposes.
Yeah.
And so in that, as far as like having a record and because those are the questions I asked too, is like, well, you've led up to Abram's lineage from Shem, from Noah, and so forth back on to Adam.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so why that family line and why all that? And you get a greater scope the more you read those portions from Genesis 3 to the beginning of 12. But other than just that, other than the text being preserved in such a way so that there could be evidence, so that we can understand and see from God's vantage what he was doing.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. And
so as far as like critically being examined and things like that, or like, well, how do we really know other than just it said God did this?
Yeah.
There was an oral tradition, and there were things that apologetically could show that there was preservation.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a falsified fact.
Well, yeah,
and it's not only that.
Yeah.
But with that reality too, it's like I don't necessarily know how we go about answering, individually, like, well, why that point in time, or were there more texts? And
it's even interesting because God could have easily just preserved solely that. He could have spoken to thousands of others, and let's I mean, I don't want to assume that just for the sake of assuming it, because obviously there's not a real point to that. to assume that he spoke to others, because all that matters is that he spoke to Abraham, and that's so we don't need to be like, oh well, God clears. No. Like if we needed to know that, there would be text about that, but just food for thought, just to play with it. I mean,
yeah,
he could have just allowed all the other evidence or all the other so-called speaking scenarios to be destroyed and only Abram's, but for the sake of sticking to scripture, that's obviously not all that mattered was him speaking to Abraham.
Exactly. Well, and when you see the purpose of why Matthew wrote to his audience was revealing the messianic fulfillment through prophecy and the rendering of the Old Testament, yes, for preservation again of the family lineage, to show the bloodline of Christ from the duration of all of Old Testament history. But that first chapter was mainly to show this is why the Father had done it in the way that he had done it. And this is why, since before the foundations of the world, they were going to carry it through this way. It was strategic, it was intentional, it was so yeah, again, as far as the human side, getting into all of the details at the base level, it's like, dude, God was not playing around. He set everything into motion, and in that he accomplished what he said he was gonna do. Part of it too is verse 2 or verse 1 and 2 where he's like, I'm gonna make you a great nation, but in verse 1 at the end he's like, to the land that I will show you. And in Joshua 21 is where that's fulfilled. And at the end of that little text, I can't remember the exact verses off the top of my head, but at the end of that text where it's described how it was given, is that and all that God had promised to do came to pass. Nothing was missing. All that he had promised to give them was given. And it was just like, dang, like that's the point. Those little details of just like those words of like, and he did it. Like, he said he could accomplish what he was going to do. And I was like, dude, that's so just crazy in and of itself. He's faithful.
And I think kind of backtracking a little bit to what you were just saying in terms of he was so serious about his plan and about doing what he's doing, that also comes through and shows with Jesus being so intentional. And then I wonder, for us as Christians, especially in our culture today, maybe it's always been this way, but there's like an overemphasis sometimes on grace. In this mentality of like, oh, like God's gonna like do what he's gonna do, and it's like this almost like passive Calvinism. Where it's like, God's sovereign, so therefore I don't have to do anything, and he's gracious. But it's like, no, like mortify your sin. Take steps of action to become holy as he is holy. It's not going to be in your own works or by your own will. That is the will of the Father, that is Christ in you through you. But it's like, don't be passive about it. And I felt like so oftentimes, even here, I just get ridiculed for being passionate about desiring to be holy as he is holy. And not being passive about let's take into account every thought, word, and action. And the second that I fall out of those things, I feel so hypocritical when I try to work back to that place. The second that I've decided to compromise in my thoughts and in my words and in my actions, and it's clear, everybody can see like, oh, this is how you've been talking, or this is how you've been acting. It's harder for me to go back to that place of like, no, but God, like I do desire to be holy as you are holy, and I want to like, I want to be, destroying the works of the flesh, but I feel so afraid that everybody's gonna just call me a hypocrite, and I'm not in that space right now, but just thinking about like, why do we ridicule people for being like there's a certain level that it does obviously become legalism and it becomes hypercritical, but I feel like I have to be careful, but I would almost rather that we were hypercritical of one another for the sake of becoming holy, rather than being so gracious as to let ourselves just slide back. You know what I mean?
Nurture passivity.
You can find the balance, but to find the balance, you have to first go to the extreme.
Well, and I think too, like in that, it's okay. So here's the thing: the differentiation, and this is what I've been specifying to people recently, because this is something that like I've been working with that for a couple of years now too, is just that reality of like, well, if I'm pursuing excellence, am I then in my criticism, and my desire to not want to settle for less, how how do I coincide with that not becoming legalism? And I think at the base of it, we need to understand the pursuit of excellence is us working out our salvation with fear and trembling, because he, in his grace, has desired by his good pleasure to work and will his good pleasure in us. But the result of that is us working out our salvation with fear and trembling. You're called to be holy, and yeah, you shouldn't settle for less. You're called to be better. You can be better, and you should be. Why? Because of the fear of the Lord. Yeah. You're in 2 Corinthians 7:1. You're perfecting those things in spirit and in body. Yeah. Because of the fear of the Lord. Yeah. And because of the promises at the preface of that. Like, it's his promise. You seek because of his promises to be faithful and obedient, and understanding that is rooted in the fear of the Lord. And so I think the only time that it ever becomes legalism is when you think that your justification had to do with those works. Justification is where legalism is the issue. Oh my goodness. Because if we think there's anything that we're doing that has to affect salvation, then like Galatians, we've forsaken grace. But to think that why would you be rigorous in a disciplined, structured life? Because at the base of it, if I know I live in a perverse world and I'm called to walk circumspectly, and even more things were exhorted by Paul, actually, this is something we were talking about with Miles in church planning on Thursday, and he went off. It was great. but he went off on something that was key, because he was saying there's actually 1,100 things that Paul exhorts the church to do. And that's just either it was just Paul, or it was that's the whole of the New Testament, Christ included. And if you look at the culture that we dwell in, if we're called to come out from among them and be set apart and be holy, then you read things like Matthew 6 and the patterns of prayer and charitable deeds and fasting that Christ goes into, because he's you should be doing this, because this is actually showing that if you're going to come back to this as the basis, this is you rigorously disciplining yourself in the midst of a culture. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's not legalism, but rather it is us seeking to be faithfully obedient to the call that we're given. Yeah. And the identity that we have. Yeah. And in that is the flourishment of everybody else too. That is the, like you're saying, there's going to be that unified effort, going back to searching out fellowship and stuff like that. If we're all cohesively doing that and we're spurring each other on, then we understand that iron only sharpens iron if they clash. Yeah. It's not a matter of wow, I was so built up by you and that brother. It was dude, what the hell are you doing? You get on your feet and go. Yeah. And how can I help you with that? And you offer yourself, but you call them, don't settle for less. Yeah. Because Christ didn't settle for less. Yeah. It says he sanctified himself and prepared himself. And then in 1 John, those, when they understand 1 John 3, behold what manner of love that we've been given. And the promise in verse 2 is that we're going to see him face to face, for we shall see him as he is. Yeah. And then verse 3 is, and those who have this hope purify themselves just as he is pure. And it's if we're not in the process of purifying ourselves, then what are we doing? Yeah. We're dude, and that goes back to what we were saying in the car earlier, where it's just but I think I'm growing in that inviting and being there to help. Yeah. I believe that I present myself as there to help. Yeah. Maybe I could do more, but it's what more do you need other than a verbal invitation and a verbal that's one thing. And I feel bad because this is low key a slap to a lot of different people, but it's when somebody's oh yeah, let's say I invite you to have devos with me in the morning. Let's wake up together. Let's pursue the Lord, tomorrow morning, and let's get in the Word. Let's pray. Let's go for it. Spend an hour. And it's yeah, dude, I'll totally do that if you wake me up. It's okay, so I just invited you to come pursue becoming holy with me, and now you're going to ask me to do the initial heavy lifting for you. That's not gonna fly, dude. I'm sorry, that's just, that's not gonna fly. And I am sorry. I've been there. It is me. It can still be me today. So I'm not saying that I have a place of I'm better than, but there should be a righteous anger with that, where it's we should not allow each other to just be pacified within our faith and just be dude.
And yes, to a certain degree, it's like, yeah, like we should prefer one another, weigh each other up. But it's like, no. Jesus calls us to seek. Jesus sought the Father. Mm-hmm. He calls us to seek the Father. There should not have to be any assistance other than the Holy Spirit for that. Mm-hmm. We should not need somebody to wake us up in order for us to pursue a relationship with the Lord.
Yeah,
and we should be hungry. We should be starving for that.
Exactly. Well, and I think too, like, and that goes exactly with what you're saying. Like, how then do we balance? Because this
presenting it and actually helping.
Yeah, presenting, actually helping, actually offering ourselves, because that's exactly what Christ did. He, for example, like the father who came, I think it was the centurion, or just the father who came and said, "I believe, but help my unbelief.
Yeah,
I believe that you are who you say you are.
Yeah,
but I don't know if I believe that you're actually gonna be pull through on this." And that's in the brink of the situation, looking hopeless, because obviously we can understand from a human standpoint, his son is about to like perish.
Yeah,
like physically, and so it's like there's that desperation, and it's like I want to believe, but like I don't feel like I can, and so I need you to help me in that. And Jesus meets him there. And then he's like, you demonstrate it by going and knowing that your son has been made well, by going and witnessing it, and testifying of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think initially, though to a degree, I think you're right, we shouldn't settle less from ourselves. The process of people actually wanting something is the process by which people change, and the process by which sanctification is born out is also only in the manner of how much do they want it, you know what I mean? How much are they willing to sacrifice and pursue that? And so I think initially it wouldn't be wrong to say, okay, yeah, I promise to like wake you up.
Yeah.
Initially, like, and over time, it's like,
there needs to be a weaning off of that.
Yeah, and that's the question. How do you appropriately go off of that? And
what's the time frame?
Well, yeah, and also that goes back to the youth ministry conversation. The body's in flux, so that's different per individual as well.
Yeah.
And then if it starts becoming consistent and you're seeing like a legitimacy, they're just saying, I'm just not used to getting up. Like I need you to help me in that way. That's you being as Christ would. To say you're not settling for less, and I'm not making you settle for less, but you're pushing yourself. Now, if the individual just is passively like, like, okay, man, yeah, just like wake me up, and be like, well, like, whoa, wait, okay, I think that's with the health of a bargain. It's because I've invited you, and then I've challenged you, then therefore I want you to be able to actually have the capacity to challenge as well.
Yeah, show some drive, show some interest.
Yeah, and that starts with you, the inviter, doing and showing the interest. Yeah. But I think through bargaining, and what I mean by that is, okay, sure, but if they seem passive for some reason, and obviously I don't want to be the discerner of man's hearts because I'm not, but I think it would even be better to say, okay, after you meet the first time, be like, next time you wake me up. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's that offsetting,
that give and
because
take,
they're like, because they're like, oh, and it's not like the world's issues are in my hands, but it's like, but there's a responsibility given out. There's an acceptance, and they have to make it into their own and say, wow, I have to count the cost. Do I really want this? Do I really want this with this individual that they've invited me into? And I think that's the process of like discipleship too. And it's like,
I lack so much in that area, man.
Well, I do too. And like,
I just mean even simply like understanding how to, because I feel like I have the initial heart and the initial desire and the initial kind of drive for it, but the actual act of carrying it out with empathy,
for sure,
with compassion, with grace, that is where I find myself lacking so much. And that's where I can in turn become legalistic, I think, sometimes, just to a certain degree. So
for sure. Well, and I honestly think they have ARC here, actively reaching kids.
Dude, CJ showed me the notes for that.
Yeah, well, and showing the notes is one thing, but until somebody has like gone, you're not gonna see those notes in display. And what I mean by that too is like, it's not saying like, oh wow, because of ARC I'm more empathetic, but I had to become empathetic. Yeah. Because I had the heart to come up I had the heart of Christ, which compels me to do such.
Yeah.
But coming to see these kids of like almost in like writhing in pain internally for their sakes, just like, I want salvation for you, I want this thing for you, but you don't seem to want it for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of, I think, Christ's heart towards us in settling, like, and when we do settle for less, when we not simply fall short, but even, intentionally, begin to be like that sheep, like we were talking about earlier. But it's that moment of him saying, there's so much that you don't even know that I've given you and that you've been capacitated to do. And I want that for you.
Yeah.
And I will do everything that, but there's also that process of like, but you don't want it even for yourself.
Yeah.
Like as far as in our human limitation, there's just like that view of like, I love you so much and I want to bring you to this place, not to where I am, but where Christ is bringing us.
Yeah.
Then it's like, but you don't want it for yourself. And that's the part, though we can get frustrated, there's nothing that we can do about that. I can't change somebody's heart. That's the work of the Lord at that point. And as much as they'll have me, be invested in them, or as much as they'll have me, take a part in that. And that's why I think, like, I know only some people can handle so much with that, because I don't want it to be so rigorous to where it's like, I know there's a lot of like minute stuff that can be seen as excuses or legitimate reasons, but I think part of the graduating sector of a third or fourth semester is, I think the notes for ARC should be emphasized, because that's like the training, the notes that Chet goes over, but actually going, I think for at least 1 weekend or 2 weekends should be something that's required if possible, because you're getting thrown into the thick of it and you are assigned a kid or two, and 24 hours you're taking care of them. You're like, you're, if they need food or water, or they have a question about the bathroom, or some of them have had traumatic experience, so they still wet the bed, and specific things like that. And it's just like, you are called to tend to them, and it is the essence of self-denial.
Yeah. And
so like, it's only a weekend, but my goodness, when you're given a solid 48 hours to have to do that, no breaks, and the break is like, okay, you get 5 minutes, you come to a leader, you get 5 minutes, go pray real quick, come right back, jump in, and you're not promised sleep. And with the guys with Patmos even, which I love.
I saw you guys come back this semester, and guys look wiped.
Yeah, it's nuts, because it's like, man, like, even being there with Patmos and like Manny and them, they regimented like prayer shifts. So in the middle of the night, I would wake up at like 3 or 4, and then from 3 to 4, as much as like made sense. So sometimes it was only 30 to 45 minutes. I walk the grounds, make sure there's no kids out or anything.
Yeah.
All by myself in the dark, just praying and just walking, and it's just like got real, like, and so you're not sleeping that much, but there's no like greater joy. Yeah. In being like used in that way.
It's it's true. It's washing of feet, but it's washing of feet when they don't even know it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I love it so much. But... All right. Oh, am I doing it?
Yeah, we're here. We're on it. So
beautiful.
Can you do
outro it out?
Yeah, do a quick outro.
Straight up. Guys, if you have tuned in today and you've listened to this, we greatly appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us actually verbalize and process what it is to learn more about who God is and who we are, and our desire with this is not to bring anything to the table as if we have any validation in and of ourselves, but just to encourage, to give a sober perspective just from our existence in our lives and exactly what God's doing and revealing to us in that, and just to edify one another, and just to call each other to excellence, to remember a pure doctrine, a life that's contingent and built around the Word of God, so that we're able to live effectively and to pursue the furtherance of His kingdom. So
yeah. Until next time.
Straight up, grace and peace to you.